Previously on What Happened to B&M.
Look. But it would have that lift hill and that vertical loop that would just like swoop right next to that parking lot and looking like a Batman the Ride. I didn't know this was Six Flags Mid-Carolina.
So you get into the station, you pick a seat. I like the back row, but man, whichever seat you pick, your wig will be captured. You pull down your shoulder restraints that aren't vest restraints. You don't have to be that excited. You proceed on the pre-drop before it shoves you like a first grade bully pushing a kindergartner down a slide. You make a standard B&M curve drop and you're like, this is pretty smooth. I knew grandma could have rode this. She did not have to sit out. Yes, she did. When you realize this ain't no little friendly tussle, this thing is trying to beat my ass, and
you willow whip out that bat wing. Got you contemplating if you want to do a talk show with your mother and your grandma and shit. I was reminded about Afterburn when I was marathoning Batman the Ride with a couple of people from OVC a few weeks back, like some maniacs. Because Batman the Ride, gee willikers, that thing has more force than Jay-Z's album. Gave me a reminder of the many times I've gotten raptured at Cedar Point. Yes, I made rapture a verb. If you've never been raptured before, basically what that is when that coaster wraps around those curves, you take a turd. Gatekeeper was no Afterburn. I get that you're standing guard, keeping a lookout, but when you ride that, all you're doing is standing put. See, I love me some Diamondback, but if it was designed with that same cocaine that Bolliger was sniffing when he made Kumba, you would have been kumbayaing over each and every hill, just ejector. I'm just saying, if Valraven was designed with the same PCP that Mabillard hid in his cabinet when he was working to manufacture Top Gun / flight deck at California's Great America, we would have felt every one of those drops. Best believe, no doubt. B&M. Like, what the fuck actually happened?
I remember riding Batman Dark Knight at Six Flags New England. I liked it, but it didn't ready whip me like a Batman clone. I was prepared to be dominated on Dominator when all it did was caress my shoulders, until I told it that it wasn't shit on the brake run and it got my soul Shang Tsung'd out of me on those interlocking corkscrews. I mean, Patriot at Worlds of Fun was cute. I sure felt more on that 0G roll than I did on Banshee, just being honest.
What are these eras of forcefulness with B&M, and why do they exist? I decided to divide the eras of forcefulness by the years to see if there are similarities with the designs, the layouts, and how intense they are. Then I researched industry standards, industry accidents, and just general occurrences that happen that could have persuaded B&M to make shifts in their design techniques.
I identified 3 areas of B&M forcefulness. I call the first the mad scientist era. The second I call the millennium force era. And the third I call floaters get a life vest.
The mad scientist era, 1990 through 1997.
In 1987, Bolliger and Mabillard, working at Giovanola, who worked with Intamin making roller coasters including stand-up coasters, came to the conclusion, you know what? Fuck this shit, let's make our own company. They went on to make Iron Wolf at Six Flags Great America, because Great America was thirsty for some risky investments, which was prepping for Six Flags' second wave of park acquisitions, more like appropriation of parks. Iron Wolf consisted of tight curves performing figure 8 maneuvers, track sections that were interlocking, including a section of track that went through the vertical loop. It featured the first successful stand-up corkscrew.
Fireworks erupted in the sky over the Six Flags Great America theme park near Chicago to herald a marriage of movies and merriment. Batman the comic book hero has inspired Batman the Ride. It's the world's only suspended outside looping thrill ride. Park guests hang below the track in high-speed chairlift type vehicles, similar to what you'd find at a ski area, as they whirl over and around Gotham City. One rider said, It felt like being in the cockpit of a jet fighter plane.
Batman the Ride opened in 1992 as the first inverted roller coaster using ski lift style seating where legs are free to dangle. Batman the Ride also featured tight figure 8 curves and interlocking track sections, including a tight 0G roll. Busch Gardens was eager to join in this new B&M wave, allowing another guinea pig coaster that riders have never seen before. So Dragonfire at Williamsburg and Kumba at Tampa were both designed to feature sit-down trains with tight figure 8 maneuvers, many inversions including cobra rolls, interlocking corkscrew, and Kumba was the first to feature a dive loop. But Dragonfire went to Aero and Kumba went to B&M. Poor Aero. B&M continued to make bigger and more nuanced versions of the smaller inverted and stand-up coasters, including the terrain and highly themed invert Nemesis, the inverting giants including Montu and Alpengeist, and the stand-up marvels of Mantis and Chang.
But these larger coasters really gave way to the second era of B&M forcefulness. An era a bit less intense, the Millennium Force era. 1998 through 2006. The use of record-breaking inversions towering over 100 feet gave more graceful, floaty feels of the coasters rather than those really sharp, intense inversions that were felt on some of the originals, such as Batman the Ride clones.
Riddler's Revenge featured a massive yet graceful 124-foot vertical loop and 2 dive loops where the corkscrews towards the end of the coasters remain tight to maintain intensity towards the end of the coaster when the speed is reduced.
B&M continued to innovate their coaster designs for different coaster experiences.
The new floorless train design debuting with Medusa at Six Flags Great Adventure in 1999 used similar features of Kumba, yet a bit more stretched out as riders' legs dangled above the racing track below them. B&M Hyper Coasters, a non-inverting roller coaster design with drops over 200 feet, debuted in a twister design with Raging Bull at Six Flags Great America, and an out and back design, rare for B&M, yet similar to Morgan and Aero Hyper coasters of the time, with Apollo's Chariot. Some years later, B&M unveiled a Nitro at Six Flags Great Adventure, featuring more of a out and back design. In 2002, Air was unveiled in Alton Towers, allowing riders to face down as if they were flying. This coaster was similar to the competitor Vekoma's Flying Dutchman design. Air was immediately followed by Superman clones, and then in 2006 brought Tatsu. 1998, Oblivion debuted in Alton Towers as the first dive coaster featuring a 180-foot vertical drop into a pit. In 2005, SheiKra, a dive coaster in Busch Gardens, Tampa, featured a vertical drop from a 200-foot lift and wide seating featuring 3 rows of 10 seats. Dueling Dragons featured a racing interweaving inverted coaster design, including 2 vertical loops that race within feet of each other. Incredible Hulk, a sit-down roller coaster, used its first launch system for a B&M coaster to propel riders up the themed tunnel lift.
B&M also continued to make standard sit-down coasters, inverted coasters, and stand-up coasters.
Wildfire in Silver Dollar City, a looping sit-down coaster, used seats where riders' feet could not touch the bottom of the train, similar to that of the hypercoaster model. Georgia Scorcher was a smaller scale stand-up using more vertical moments rather than rounded curves and inversions. B&M debuted Afterburn and Great Bear in the late 90s, Silver Bullet and Talon after the Millennium, and Patriot and Black Mamba in the mid-2000s.
Then B&M had a dry spell. Welcome to Floaters Get a Life Vest, 2007 through today.
The hypercoaster was continued using V-shaped stadium-style seating, allowing to a row a clear view ahead of you with Behemoth, Intimidator, and Diamondback in the late 2000s. They used the out and back layouts similar to Apollo's Chariot rather than the twister design layout of Raging Bull. The dive coaster was continued with Griffin. The flying coaster design continued with Manta at SeaWorld Orlando and Starry Sky Ripper at Joyland.
So things began to pick up in the early 2010s.
First off, the notable B&M pre-drop vanished, so you know something was off. If there's no pre-drop, I ain't having it. So the ring coaster was created first with Raptor at Gardaland in 2011, which riders sit on the sides of the track, requiring certain moments to be stretched out to prevent collisions of supports and track. This later manifested in Wild Eagle, Swarm, X-Flight, and Gatekeeper. The Giga Coaster was created using a more twisted version of the out and back layout, with Leviathan at Canada's Wonderland standing over 300 feet tall. It had obvious inspiration from Millennium Force, which at the time has been ranked #1 roller coaster in the world by Golden Ticket Awards for over a decade. Later, we would see a similar 325-foot Fury 325 at Carowinds, which would take the place of #1 coaster in the world. Some of the stand-up coasters built in the 90s were being converted into floorless coasters. The flexible and compressing vest restraint was designed for wing coasters, quite similar to those from the flying coaster models. These vest restraints began to be used on other types of coasters, such as inverts with Banshee and the dive coaster such as Valraven, both using similar extensive turns and exaggerative large inversions as wing coasters use.
So what really prompted these changes? We'll explore this next time, part 3. Do you agree with my eras of B&M forcefulness? What would you change? Were there more elements that also shaped those eras that I may have missed out? What do you believe are the reasons for these changes? Please comment those down below. Hit that thumbs up. Please share this with everyone. I'm Rob from Rob's Rides, keeping it 100 with all things amusement. And if you thought I was memes to the max, hit subscribe and I'll come back with a new video.